Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Robertson, and for this episode I'm joined by violinist Pei-Wen Liao and pianist William Goldstein. Their album Brushstrokes, the intersection of art and music, has an interesting concept behind it. It's also an interesting way of composing, and the music is simply stunning. There's so much to like about this album, and I think it's probably one of my favourites for 2022. Goldstein's a very experienced pianist, and Pei-Wen Liao studied at Juilliard and then Yale. There's a discussion here about the improvisation. It doesn't sound like it's improvised. I want to get to grips with how the improvisation worked between the two of them. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful. This album is absolutely one of my favourites of 2022 in so many ways, for the music, obviously, but also the concept behind it and the way you recorded. So I'm conscious that I don't have an awful lot of time with you. So can you explain to me about what I'm really interested in is the way that you composed it in real time?
Well, I discovered in 2011 that the gift I've had since I was a child was not common amongst my colleagues. And the gift, really simply, when I thought about it, was the ability to speak the language of music in real time just as easily as every normal person speaks a spoken language. Music's a more complex language, many events happening simultaneously, themes, counter themes. Anyhow, for me, it's as natural as just speaking. And I discovered, well, initially I discovered that I could do, sit down and create in real time. I didn't share with anybody because I didn't think it was special. I didn't know that anybody really cared to hear what I just doodled. And I had a career as a conventional composer. And then in 2011, that changed when I was asked to be president of the jury at the Transatlantic Festival in Poznan, Poland, run by Jan Kaczmarek, and they had a competition in creating music in real time. And Jan said to me, you have to eliminate the three-note thing from the competition. And the three-note thing was something that Franz Liszt used to do, and I started doing it before I realized that Liszt had done this a lot. To illustrate to an audience that I was creating something in real time, I'd have somebody come to the piano, pick three random notes, and create a piece. So I was doing that for a couple of years, and then my composer colleague Jim DePasquale said we should try to do an album together, composing in real time. And I poo-pooed it. I thought it was not possible. I never know what I'm doing. How's anybody going to follow me? And I don't want to be interrupted by anybody else. Anyhow, long story short, Jim was very persuasive and persistent, and we started experimenting, and eventually magic began to happen, and we came out with an album called In the Moment. And that opened the door for me to find musicians who are comfortable improvising. I haven't yet come across anybody who's doing this on their own, but gifted artists like Pei-Wen are able to, as a jazz performer would, improvise with an existing structure. Well, I'm creating the structure, but they can respond to the themes and the motifs that I'm coming out with, and we interact. And you'll notice on the album that there are many pieces where she starts first because I don't want to be the lead all the time. And I've found over the years doing these albums, this is, I don't know, my sixth or seventh collaborative composition album, that the music is always different because the personality of the person I'm working with is always different, not to mention the instrument. although this is my third piano violin collaborative album. But I'm crazy about this one. And Pei-Wen, I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but I have submitted the album for Grammy consideration in the best chamber music album for 2022.
Wow,
So,
thank you. Thank
yeah,
you. Excited for that. And then,
well,
yeah, and then we'll see. But I also wanted to add to Bill is,
please.
as a classically trained musician, this was really out of my comfort zone, to really create an entire album based on that idea really seemed insurmountable at first. But I remember when Bill reached out to me and said, hey, why don't you come over and let's just play together. And that was our first time creating music in real time. But prior to meeting Bill, I did not know I had this talent within me. So I always call Bill, Bill's my magician. He really found this special talent inside me that I didn't know I had. So and then we took it from there, from our first meeting, and then we played in Jersey at the Lakewood concert, and then we created a really special piece together, and then that was that was what led to the album. So I'm really thankful for Bill for the invitation, and really to create music with him. It's just so special.
Well, I return all the compliments. Yes, Pei-Wen and I performed the 2 live performances, one at the New York Arts Club, was it? Or what's the name of the club now?
The National Arts Club.
National Arts Club, yeah, in New York. And then I was invited to do a homecoming concert in Lakewood, New Jersey, where I grew up. And I invited Pei-Wen amongst a few other performers to join me. And what we created that day is on YouTube, a movement for violin and piano created live in front of the audience. Piece blows me away. It just, it was a perfect performance. Just anyhow. So
yeah.
I mean, the album.
Right. I find this incredible because I'm familiar with jazz improvisation, and I interview people all the time who improvise jazz, but this isn't jazz, but it is improvised.
No. Well, the main difference in jazz is that jazz improvisation is almost always around an existing structure and composition. So people have a roadmap of either harmonies to follow or a melody. In the instance of free jazz, it's generally somebody showing off their incredible technique on an instrument with really no compositional elements. It just doesn't, it's exciting, but it doesn't go anywhere. But when I do it alone, I'm always creating a composition. I take an idea, gets developed.
Yeah,
and they also
I would say, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that we communicate and we develop our ideas and scenes further. And then, sometimes you will hear in an album that we throw the scenes back and forth, and we grow and develop or play even new materials together, where the other person needs to catch it or to receive it. So I would say that's the main difference between improvisation and creating music in real time.
Right. But then can you recreate it another time?
Of course not. Do you remember what you said 5 minutes ago?
Exactly. That's the thing. Okay. I thought you were going to say you have a marvelous way of kind of having.
Look. When I was a child, I'd go to the movies and I'd come back and sit down and play what I heard. So I could take the essence of what we've done and take the idea and do it again, but it's not going to be. It's going to be completely different.
It's not going to be the same. Yeah, it's going to be different every single time.
Hillary, tell us the story you told us last month. You're going to tell the same story, but it's not going to be the same way.
Absolutely.
So, it really is. And what's really interesting is I'm really continuing a tradition that was quite popular and famous in the 18th, 19th centuries amongst almost all of the well-known composers, because they were all geniuses and they could all do this. but they couldn't record any of it. So when
No.
Chopin wrote an impromptu, his mind was involved, and he's putting on paper, what he recalls of what came to him. What we're doing is taking the pure essence of the creative instinct, and we record it. And I will tell you, on our album, there's lots of cleanups. I mean, that's what's so remarkable about the Lakewood concert. They were just perfect. But you take the essence of everything, and you end up with some really beautiful stuff that's so inspired, directly. I mean, it blows me away, actually.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that this album truly is one of really my favorites.
I'm glad it is, because I've been listening to it on and off for the last few weeks, and I hear something different each time, and it's the I mean, everyone knows the sonic connections between piano and violin work extraordinarily well, but in particular yours do, and I think there is a sense of you, that interplay which you both talked about, which is really extraordinary.
Well, thank you so much.
I mean, thank you.
Really, I cannot tell you how nice it is here to hear nice things.
Yes.
Like I say, we recorded the album in 3 days, but I spent at least 6 months editing and going through all of the material, the hours and hours of material, to come up with the things that I thought were really the best.
Special.
Yeah. And then I think what's so special about this album is, unlike Mussorgsky's pictures at an exhibition where the paintings came first and the music, we had the music, then the painting, and each track is paired with a painting from the Met. So I think that's why I call Bill my magician, because he came up with the idea to somehow link all the pieces together.
The concept
Bill,
of the album,
you're the guy.
After it was recorded. Did you see the booklet we put together?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
And actually, what I did was, because the first time I listened to it, I just listened to the album. The second time, I was flicking through the booklet on my screen, and I suddenly went, oh, okay, now it particularly makes sense. Things like the watching geese, and it does sound like you saw the painting and then created the music, but I know you did it the other way around, which is extraordinary.
So, well, look, Pei-Wen comes from a different culture, and yet not. I've done many movie scores where I've done very Eastern Asian influenced things, and so I mean, I'm very comfortable in all kinds of music, and I've improvised as a guest artist in Taiwan and Shanghai with different. I've worked with an erhu player, but nevertheless, this particular album spanned such a variety of genres, from the Pollock, which is pushing an envelope a little bit, to watching geese, and then I love the
French one.
impressionist, and so there are 3 numbers on the album that are in that vein. And so after I selected the tracks, how do I tie all these tracks together, and what makes sense to have a Chinese piece with a French impressionist piece? So it didn't take me too long to decide that it had to be either a trip to the museum or whatever. And then I just came up with the idea of brushstrokes. I just loved the title and then found the paint matched that.
Yeah, and it, I think it's very interesting because I remember at the time of when we did the album, when we recorded, we didn't really talk about, you know, what scene we want to do, like, oh, let's do an Eastern influences, or let's do a French, you know, piece. I think we just, you know, who, like, I started the piece or he started the piece, and we just kept playing and playing and playing. So it's so, I think it's so special what Bill is doing, and I think more people need to know about this instant composition and creating music in real time.
Yeah. And I really love the ninth track, the gestation creative metamorphosis. That's because that's sort of almost getting to the heart, isn't it, of that creative process.
Yes.
Right. It's a 17-minute track. I mean, my goodness gracious. I was tempted to really, you know, get in there with a knife and edit it, but it just seemed to hang together. Yeah. And no, I mean, it's a very unique album. All of these created in real-time albums are unique, particularly the collaborative composition ones, because it's a combination of two personalities and two artists coming together. It's really very exciting for me. It really just reinvigorated my life, I would say.
Brilliant.
My life too, Bill. You changed my life too. And I want to say, you know, I tried to do this with someone else, like, you know, hey, let's play together. But it's never the same. I always feel at peace when I play with Bill, and it's, you know, so heartwarming and so special. And I know there's a special connection when we make music together.
Oh, thank you, darling. That's really beautiful.
That is so
I must
nice.
say, Hillary, I understand you're in the Cotswolds.
No, I'm in Hertfordshire.
Oh, you're Hertfordshire. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Do you know the UK?
Not intimately, but I used to go to record there a lot. I have a lot of friends there, and I do remember on one of my trips when I was recording, I rented a car and drove through the Cotswolds. I've been down to the sea, Brighton, and all those places. You know, I mean, I've driven around. I've never made it up to Scotland or to Wales, but I'm very fond of my English friends. Actually, I have a piece called For My English Friends, which was an improvisation, a 3-note piece the notes picked by somebody who was English, but I didn't know he was English because he never opened his mouth. And then after the piece was completed, I said, you know, that sounds very English. And he says, well, you know, I am English. So anyhow,
and I love this idea of the 3-note piece. I love that. I find that really fascinating because, you know, where does that idea come from? Where does, you know, the thing it's come from somewhere, or it's not come from anywhere and it takes you somewhere?
Well, that's a whole other thing. I mean, I have many of these 3-note albums. I mean, A Life in 3 Notes, instant composition. I did an album called Soul of an Actor, where 16 actors, some of them very well known, picked 3 notes. What's very interesting about that is that the emotional connectivity to the person who picks the 3 notes and everybody in the room when that's happening astounds me, because their emotional reactions, their tears. Very often the person says, oh my God, you told my life story. And I don't know anything about these people. They're complete strangers, but there's some mystical element that seems to appear, which is very humbling, very humbling.
Thank you so much for your time. And I think this is a lovely thing that we could do this from Taiwan to London to New York. No, you're in LA. Fab.
Thank you, Hillary.
Okay.
Take care, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. care. Bye.
That was a genuinely fascinating interview. It was great to hear about their composition in real time, improvisation approach. And how wonderful that I was able to speak to Pei-Wen in Taiwan and Bill in Los Angeles. So I hope you enjoyed listening to that conversation, and I really hope that you can listen to some of this music. So the album's called Brushstrokes, The Intersection of Art and Music, Pei-Wen Liao and William Goldstein. And let's hope that Grammy nomination comes through. Although, as Bill said, people don't get it. People don't understand how it can be improvised, composed in real time, and yet not jazz. This is classical music. I began this podcast with an extract from Watching Geese, and now you're listening to Kandinsky Candy. It's really fascinating how each of these pieces is linked to an artwork, but that link was not made until after they were recorded. If you've enjoyed listening to this episode, please do listen to some of the others. There are some fascinating people. I'm so blessed to have so many wonderful guests. There are loads more lined up, and thank you so much for your support of Harmonious World. If you would like to support me still further, you can rate and review, you can share, you can just talk about it on social media, you can share it on social media. I'm getting more and more listeners for each episode, and that would be really good to build that even further. So thank you for listening once more, and please do remember the Quincy Jones quote, let's make this a more harmonious world by sharing what we're good at. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.